Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our ordinary meeting of Council, 21st of February 2023. As the meeting chair, I give my consent for this open council meeting to be streamed live, recorded and published online. Anyone who is invited to read out a question or a presentation will be recorded, and their voice, image and comments will form part of the live stream and recording. The Chair and/or the CEO have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. The stream will stop prior to the closed section of the meeting and will recommence for the conclusion of the meeting. Public is able to view the live stream via our website at www.pyrenees.vic.gov.au. Should technical issues prevent the continuation of the stream, the meeting will be adjourned until the issue is resolved, or the meeting will be postponed to another time and date in accordance with Council's meeting procedures and governance rules. Please stand for the opening prayer. Heavenly Father, we ask you to give your blessing to the Council, direct and prosper its deliberations to the advancement of your glory and the true welfare of the people of the Pyrenees Shire. Amen. We acknowledge the people past and present of the Wadawurrung, Jar Jar Wurrung, Eastern Maar and Watchaballock tribes whose land forms the Pyrenees Shire. We pay our respects to the customs, traditions and stewardship of the land by the elders and people of these tribes on whose land we meet today. Are there any apologies? No. Any notice of disclosure of interest by councillors or officers? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in case we discuss the West Victorian transmission link of the BNI West, just to declare that I'm a potentially an affected landholder in the West Victorian Transmission Network project.
Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Mr. Mayor, I have an interest in the closed item, given that it relates to the performance review of the CEO, item 15.2.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Confirmation of the previous minutes. Recommendation that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on 17th of January 2023, as previously circulated to councillors, be confirmed. Moved Councillor Ferrari, seconded Councillor Keogh. All those in favour? Carried. Is there any business arising from those previous meetings? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to the CEO, and it's not these minutes, it's actually the December minutes where we actually had AEMO and the West Victorian Transmission people speaking within the council meeting. I know we've got some questions at Warborough, but my understanding, Mr. CEO, would be that was effectively publicly broadcast at that meeting. So if anyone wishes to go on our website, they could actually look up that presentation. Although I think things might be moving this week, but certainly there's some information there for people if they want to understand where those projects are at.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, that's correct, Councillor Clark. The actual meeting was live streamed and it's contained on the YouTube channel, which is accessible from our website. So.
No questions?
No questions. Unless there are any from the gallery.
Yeah, I better do it. Members of the public are encouraged to ask questions of council at ordinary council meetings. Members of the public may attend the meetings in person to verbally ask a question. All attendees must register by midday on the day of the meeting to ensure council adheres to the number of attendees permitted under its COVID safe plan. To register, either call 797 363 or visit www.pyrenees.vic.gov.au about Pyrenees Shire Council /council meeting attendance. Members of the public who are unable to attend in person can participate in question time by submitting their questions in writing, either online through the council's website, by mail or hand delivered. A person can ask a maximum of 2 questions at any one meeting on any topic, and the questions and responses shall not exceed 5 minutes. Questions are to be received by 12 noon on the day of the meeting. Questions are read by the chairperson during public participation. Chairperson or councillor or council officer to whom the question is referred may immediately ask a question. Take the question on notice for the next ordinary meeting. Public submissions. Members of the public may present a submission to council in the period immediately following public question time. Members of the public who are unable to attend in person to make a submission on an agenda item may do so in writing, either online through council's website, by mail or hand delivered. The chair will allocate a maximum of 5 minutes to each person who wishes to address council. Submissions are to be received by 12 noon on the day of the meeting. There will be no discussion or debate with the public attendee. However, councillors may ask questions for clarification of the attendee. Are there any questions or submissions? Trevor.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one question tonight. Is it possible that the Pyrenees Council will consider some way of putting a communication out, perhaps attached to our rates, or some way to clarify what the procedure and the law is around slashing or cutting your property in front of your property on the roadside? We call them nature strips in some urban areas, but just some sort of way that people will not get confused by the message that needs to go out there, particularly pre-fire periods. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nolan.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think that's an excellent suggestion. I'm happy to take that on board and look to get some communication out around that. I think there's always open to provide some education about some of these activities that impact on the community. So thanks for raising that.
Items for noting, items 10. Do I have a mover for the items for noting? Moved Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Vance. Any questions, Councillor Clark?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, jumping in early. Firstly, a comment and a question. Ms. Bramwell, firstly, a thank you to you and your team for closing out so many cars. That's a great achievement in February, thank you. And secondly, a question, please. I noticed in the finance report we're behind fairly significantly in terms of capital expenditure. And I assume, is that just seasonally related? I assume just because of the wet up to the 31st of December?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Clark. It is partly timing issue. It's also due to the flood impacts that we had late last year. Yeah, thank you.
That's it. Councillors, we have a motion before us. All those in favour? Carried. Here. Item 13.1, Economic Development and Tourism. Mr. Nolan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek council decision on becoming a member of the Visitor Economy Partnership that's been formed to represent the interests of the Central Highlands regional tourism industry. Mr. Mayor, there's a fairly detailed report in the agenda, so I'll just sort of pick some elements of it that relate, that I want to highlight. In 2019, the Victorian Minister for Tourism actually undertook a review of tourism and certainly regional tourism boards. And the purpose of that is to understand what the opportunities and the needs to grow the regional tourism market. There were 5 recommendations came from that review, one of which was the establishment of a visitor economy, the state's visitor economy recovery, which recommended an action to transition to regional tourism boards to visitor economy partnerships. So that review also made some actions around strengthening industry, particularly around digital capability, digital marketing, business sustainability, and sought that the new visitor economy partnerships would also be supported with funding to deliver tailored, localised industry strengthening programs. A further action was around skills and workforce planning, with an expectation that these partnerships would collaborate with industry, and that the state government would provide funding that would be made available for partnerships to develop and implement tailored local workforce plans. So the review identified that the City of Ballarat, Moorabool and Pyrenees councils would form a regional tourism partnership around the Central Highlands, and that an opportunity for Golden Plains and Hepburn, who are also associated with other regions, could also actively participate in Central Highlands where there is a benefit to do so. The expectation of the state is that these visitor economy partnerships will be concluded and in place by the 30th of June this year. Now, as you know, Mr Mayor and councillors, that council has maintained an affiliation with regional tourism bodies, and previously with Visit Ballarat, before that with Grampians Tourism. And in more recent times, in between the review and what we have now, council have had an MOU with the City of Ballarat to collaborate on opportunities to better build the visitor economy at our local level. The opportunity for a partnership creates a chance for leveraging collective expenditure of partner organisations on international marketing programs to attract visitors to the Pyrenees, industry strengthening programs, training and development for those that are in the tourism sector, delivered in partnership with regional organisations who facilitate these programs. They also they provide support for product development, both public and private investment, and strategic tourism development, as well as representation to the Victorian government. The Visitor Economy Partnership being established for Central Highlands region will be the new peak body representing the region's tourism industry. Mr Mayor, a proposal is before council to participate in this partnership. The proposal comprises a range of different elements. One of it is the draft proposed constitution that has been worked up for this visitor economy partnership, which provides for an independent facilitator and a membership that includes that independent chair, the 5 local government representatives, each having a seat at the table, as well as 5 skilled-based industry representatives. The board will be responsible to develop a tourism strategy, and there will be provision for a 4-year membership. And should members, the council members, choose to withdraw from the partnership, then there's a requirement to provide 12 months' notice. The base level membership requires Pyrenees Council to contribute $30,000 with buy-in options to present to councils for their consideration over and above that $30,000. And those buy-in opportunities are to collaborate around particular marketing campaigns that might be targeted around a particular aspect of tourism, whether it be nature-based tourism or food and wine offerings, to attract a particular market to the region. So those marketing campaigns and those collaborative opportunities are over and above the 30,000 base membership. Mr Mayor, going back a few years ago when council was considering whether to be a member of a regional board based at Ballarat for the same purpose, council engaged a consultant in the industry to provide advice to council. And there are a number of options at that stage for council to consider in terms of its alliance with the Grampians, with Ballarat, or to go it alone and do your own thing, or a range of other options were presented. In fact, there was something like around 7 options that were presented for memory, might have been more. But in terms of the recommendations from that analysis, it did strongly recommend that council does not go it alone, and the recommendation at that stage was an alliance with Ballarat Regional Tourism, who was the body at the time. And the reasons for not going it alone, essentially because of by going it alone, you have a lack of access to state government marketing funds and the lack of funds overall to target Melbourne markets, the lack of professional marketing staff and funds to undertake the breadth of programs available through a regional tourism association, and out of communication and professional development loop, which is often one of the benefits of being associated with the regional body. So you're not actually having those same links into interstate government. So there was a range of reasons why it was a good decision back then. Mr. Mayor, there's been a lot of sort of consideration of this, and I know this is a considerable amount of money for a resource constrained council. There is also some unknowns associated with knowing just precisely what the benefits are going to reveal. However, the recommendation, Mr. Mayor, is that council becomes a member of Visit Economy Partnership being formed to represent the region's tourism industry, that council approves the CEO to negotiate the terms and conditions of council's membership, and the council maintains a provision in the 23-24 budget of $40,000 to cover both the base level membership of $30,000 and to allow some capacity for buy-in programs as outlined in the report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Nolan. Councillors, we have a motion before us.
Can I move an
Councillor
alternate,
Clark,
please, Mr. Mayor? So I'd like to move the recommendation as provided, but I'd like to add a 4th point if I could, with the councillor's indulgence. Because we don't have the screen, I'll just read it for you. It says that a further report be provided to council as to the allocation of these funds for 2023-24 and the measures that council will use to assess the work of the Visitor Economy Partnership. So that's what I'd like to add to the recommendation.
councillors, is there anyone seconding that? Councillor Ferrari. So we now have a motion before us, councillors. Would anyone like to? Councillor Clark, would you like to speak to the new motion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow on from the CEO, and I think we acknowledge what this is. I mean, if I was to make an analogy around this, it's a bit like us kind of hitching a ride on an elephant in the context of the power and size of Ballarat versus us. And the important things for us is that what Ballarat is marketing and the other councils marketing is a broader region, because we are part of that broader region in that sense of things. And it does give us a chance to access that additional support. And I think particularly for me, to hitch our message about what Pyrenees has to offer to so much of what Ballarat actually does in this space in the context of the people it brings to Ballarat in that sense of things. So I think it's really important that we do link in this point in time. But I think, as the CEO says, money doesn't grow on trees in Pyrenees as it doesn't grow anywhere else. We keep a close eye on it, and we think we've had a really good experience back in the days of Visit Ballarat in terms of getting good reports and understanding the dynamic of where we were being shown to the world in those contexts of things. And I think we should again pursue that in the same way with the new organisation.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Ferrari.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Initially, I was uncertain about committing to this recommendation, particularly the $40,000, due to some uncertainty around what we were going to get for that. But with that fourth point, with a further report be brought to the council, and we can assess and measure our what we get for our money. I'm now happy that if we've got an ability to measure, I'm happy to commit to it. And of course, it's very important that we provide support to our businesses business community when and where we can, and there's no doubt if it does work effectively, we can get some very good leverage off Ballarat, as Councillor Clark alluded to. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Ferrari. No? No, I support with the fourth element. We are financially walking a tightrope at the moment with limitations placed on us by others, and we need to be very aware of where our money is being spent. So, councillors, we have a recommendation before us. All those in favour? Carried. Asset and Development Services, Road Register Inclusions. Mr. Gowans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is seeking council to consider the inclusion of roads identified on its register of public roads. And the two road segments that are at play here are the current properties that are addressed by 2605 and 2626 Western Highway, Erseldoon, which is on the eastern side of our shire. And they're currently accessed by a road reserve that's unnamed and has not been entered into the council's register of public roads, but it has been used for property access for a number of decades. It's proposed that this be registered as a public road with classification of local access 2. The length of the road is approximately 1.26 kilometres, and the process of naming this road would then be undertaken with subsequent amendment to property addressing. The second segments of road that I'm seeking council to consider on inclusion of the list are some roads in the Barclay area. 7 properties to the east of Marshall Lane and Frenchman Sonana Road require road access. These properties abut existing road reserves. There are existing unformed tracks within the road reserves, but these tracks are not on council's register of public roads. It's proposed to add 2 sections of the road to council's register of road. Section 1 is 530 metres long and is identified in the report. And section 2 is approximately 560 metres long. It's proposed to classify these roads as local access 3 roads. This is the lowest proposed class of road on council's assets register. It includes unformed natural surface roads. Local access 3 roads do not fall under council's regular maintenance and inspection program and will only be maintained at its discretion. If property owners seek to build dwellings on the land, they would be required under planning approval to upgrade the road to local access 2 standard, namely an all-weather road suitable for emergency vehicle access. Once adopted onto the road register of public roads, these roads would be subject to the standard road naming process. Council is asked to consider adding these roads to its register of public roads and approve the commencement of the road naming process, and the officer recommendation reflects this.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Moved Councillor Vance, seconded Councillor Keogh. Councillor Vance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is predominantly a procedural matter that we're viewing here. I'm quite happy for it to be adopted as the recommendation, understanding that council will only be responsible for the roads when they're upgraded to a category 1, 2. Yeah, and at this stage they're category 3. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vance. Councillor Keogh. Any other councillor? Councillor, we have a recommendation. All those in favour? Carried. Petition, Avoca Free Council, camping. Mr. Gowan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide information for council to consider a response to the 2 petitions that we have been received over the previous months relating to the Avoca River flats and their current and future use. Petition 1 was addressed to DELP and to the Pyrenees Shire, requesting that DELP enforce their land regulations and stop camping along the Avoca River in Avoca within 20 metres of the river and 200 metres of the dwelling, and that they'll repair and restore the riparian zone along the Avoca River in Avoca. The third dot point of that petition was that Pyrenees Shire investigate and select an alternate, more suitable site in Avoca to cater to the increasing numbers of RV campers seeking free camping. That they must apply the same selection process that was applied when choosing a site in Beaufort. And that also that Pyrenees Shire put a stop to camping at the Dundas Street Public Reserve, an area that's never been designated for camping. The petition contained 91 signatures and was presented to Council at December 2022 Council meeting. Petition 2 was addressed to Pyrenees Shire Council stating the following: that the undersigned support continued free camping on the Avoca River Flat area from North Street to the Lions Park inclusive. The petition contained 763 signatures and was presented to Council at the January 2023 Council meeting. An additional 30 signatures were received on the 3rd of February. The largest parcel of land located north of the Pyrenees Highway between Faraday and Dundas Streets, Avoca, is Crown land directly managed by the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action, which is now known as DECA, was formerly known as DELP. With Pyrenees Shire Council listed as the land manager of 3 individual parcels within this overall area. The land south of the Pyrenees Highway, known as the Avoca Lions Park Reserve, is Crown land where Council has been designated the land manager. Council considered the issue of RV camping in 2016, whereby Council resolved to continue to promote Avoca as an RV-friendly town with the formal designation of the RV campsite, which had already been informally established at the Lions Park. Council currently undertakes mowing maintenance of all the above-mentioned sites through its mowing program, including the land managed by DECA. In 2021, Council sought to undertake a consultation process to understand how the community values and uses the Avoca River Flat Reserve. There were 73 respondents. The majority of respondents were supportive of retaining the current use of the land at the Avoca River Flats. Getting back to the petitions, in response to the first petition, where the petition requests Council to consider an alternative site for RV camping based on selection criteria used to inform the site in Beaufort, it's worthwhile referring to the factors reported to Council at the time of selection of the Beaufort site. Ultimately, the Beaufort site was chosen due to its more discreet location in comparison to other proposed options. There were at the time very few neighbouring properties, all of which had good screening via fencing at the rear of their properties. The proximity to the town retail centre and walking tracks, and the proximity to existing RV dump points. And Council currently owned and maintained the property. Council understands that there has been a long continuous history of camping on the site in Avoca. Therefore, Beaufort did not have an existing area used for camping, which meant that there was more flexibility in determining the parameters that would help determine an appropriate site for Beaufort. Given the long history of camping on the Avoca River Flats, the question regarding the appropriateness of the location needs to be considered independently. The land that is in Council control currently is being used in the same way that the adjoining land managed directly by DECA is. Therefore, it may be appropriate for Council to designate this land for camping purposes, with the exception of the Avoca Skate Park. Alternatively, Council may wish to relinquish control of the 2 parcels directly north of the Pyrenees Highway back to DECA to avoid any confusion around land management responsibility. The consultation that occurred in 2021 showed that the majority of respondents, when asked what their hopes for the site, which is the Avoca River Flats, in the future, wished for the land to continue to be used for camping and public purposes, with comments like, "It's perfect as it is, and hopefully it doesn't change." Of the 73 respondents in this consultation, the breakdown of responses to this question had 62% of respondents hope for no future changes to the use of the land, and 7% of the respondents expressed a clear view for restrictions on existing camping practices. DECA representatives have stated that the land that they are responsible for is regularly monitored, and they have reiterated that there are no changes planned for the use of the land in this area. In conclusion, it is evident that the majority of respondents across the 3 surveys and petitions wish to see camping and current usages of the Avoca River flats continue. There are a percentage of the community who are aggrieved by the camping and are of the view that there are inappropriate practices occurring. Council will continue to work with the management authorities to monitor the Avoca River flats to mitigate any inappropriate usage. And it's the officer recommendation that Council continues to support camping on the Avoca River flats, including on land that Council actively manages, and that Council designates the 2 parcels of land directly north of the Pyrenees Highway for public use, including for camping purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Gowans. Councillors, we have a recommendation before us. Do I have a mover? Councillor Vance, seconded. Councillor Clark. Councillor Vance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no fears in accepting the recommendation. I learned a long time ago that you never go against the will of the people, and it would appear to me that the petitions for camping are about almost 8 to 1 against. So it's obvious that people of the Avoca community realise that the river flats and the campers are a valuable asset to their community. They leave money in the shopping centres, even in the local news agencies. I have no worries at all with the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Vance. Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. If I could, I just want to ask a question firstly. The original question I had, here we go. The original question I had, Mr. Gowans, is does the fact that we own part of the land and Delp own part of the land create some confusion? But if I read the report correctly, while it would make sense that it's all in one ownership, it may actually create some other little issues for council in the context of the market and other activities that happen there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Clark, for your question. Yeah, look, there are some concerns around the fact that there is different ownership. Ultimately, though, the land is being used, both the council land and the DECA land, effectively in exactly the same way. So its current use, is reflective of the recommendation before council. However, there is a concern that if it was potentially given back to DECA control and there was a different opinion around how the land should be used or managed, council would obviously need to seek DECA's approval if, for particular events or the like. The market's generally on the road reserve on Dundas Street, so it doesn't have a big impact. It's probably more the one-off events that might have an impact, but it currently works well. We've got a good working relationship with the DECA representatives.
Thank you. It does sound a bit like more the better the devil you know, I think, in that sense of things. So my take is very similar to Councillor Vance in the sense that it's a completely legitimate use for the site in that context, and it's an ideal site. I mean, every town would kill to have a bit of public space like that within a block of their main town, their main street. It is just a brilliant spot to be able to camp, and that's obvious by the amount of people that use it in that sense of things. My sense is this is really more about management than it is about restriction. And I think if we can keep our good relationship with DELP and work with DELP in the context of those things, and maybe occasionally we just might need to seek a report from DELP. They are actively management, as Mr. Gowans has said in the report, I think, to give the community some surety that we have an interest in the matter. But it sounds like it's functioning pretty well, and I would agree with Councillor Vance on with the numbers on this one.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Anyone else? I read in the report, there's a small percentage of the community who are aggrieved by the camping, and it's demonstrated by the 2 petitions that the vast majority feel the campers are welcome within the town, and that small group of people need to take into account the wishes of the overall wishes of the community. Councillors, we have a recommendation. All those in favour? Carried. Corporate and Community Services, Risk Management, Ms Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report is provided to Council as part of its biannual reporting obligations on risk management. And it's in a few different parts. The first part is the Strategic Risk Register. Council adopted the former Enterprise Risk Register of risks rated as high or extreme in August 2022. And subsequent review of those risks, including an assessment of emerging risks and risk trends, has been conducted, and an updated register provided for Council's approval. The register includes 10 risks. One risk was rated as extreme, relating to financial sustainability. This was formally assessed as high, but has been reassessed for 2023 to allow for recent long-term financial modelling, highlighting the need to reduce costs in the immediate future, and combined with global risk trends analysis identifying a likely move into a low growth, low investment period. 6 risks are identified as high, reflecting global trends and internal assessment, including cyber and data security, climate change and environmental sustainability, which have been split into 2, environmental damage and extreme weather impacts, which we are already seeing the impact of that, and the government's failure to adapt to climate change, where they fail to act to mitigate climate change as political pressures and priorities continue to take precedence. Health, safety and well-being around incidents or events that cause physical or mental health injuries, customer experience and a failure to reverse the downward trend in community satisfaction and service quality. 3 risks are identified as moderate, including a failure to effectively identify and prevent fraud, ineffective work planning, recruitment and retention, and failure to provide and maintain infrastructure that meets current and future needs. Officers have also perused a range of global risk reports for 2023 that normally are released at this time of year, and identified the following key risk trends that could have an impact on council operations. And they include the current cost of living crisis, although that's likely to be short term rather than longer term, natural disasters and extreme weather events and climate change, and the global indication is that that is likely to be one of the greatest long-ranging risks of the next 10 years. Cybersecurity, digital disruption and innovative technologies, macroeconomic and geopolitical confrontation, that although the main brunt of current conflict is in the Northern Hemisphere, we do see the fallout in the Southern Hemisphere, particularly with regards to supply chain failures and significant cost increases. And human capital diversity and talent management, which covers actually quite a large, a broad spectrum of risks. So in summary, major themes for the next 12 months identify a high level of uncertainty, with the economy, human capital and advancing technology forecast to present the most challenge. The final part of the report relates to the local authorities superannuation fund defined benefits plan, where we monitor the vested benefit index to make sure to try and forecast whether it's likely to be called upon to provide extra funding for that fund. The update to 30th of September, in the latter part of 2022, financial markets, experienced a decline up until the 30th of September, which is the last result we've got so far. But the fund has to remain at 97% of the monies required if we had a total call on the fund, or everyone left at the same time. And at the moment, at the 30th of September, it was at 101.5%. So that still remains acceptable level, and council doesn't have to take any action. The December results are expected shortly. Just one other point in the report, the existing contract for internal audit services, which is one of our key risk controls or identification of lack of control. The total, it expires on the 30th of June this year. And we are going out for a request for quotation this month to start a new contract in July. And it's the officer's recommendation that council notes the information provided on global risk trends and the VBI updates and considers and adopts the updated strategic risk register for 2023. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bramwell. Councillors, we have a recommendation before us. Do I have a mover? Councillor Keogh, seconded Councillor Ferrari. Councillor Keogh.
No, just a comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, on the work that goes into these things. It's very important that we're taking note of this and covering those risks and understanding where they are. So thank you, Kathy, and your team.
Councillor Ferrari, no. Anyone else? No. I do have a comment with regard to the upgrading of a high risk to extreme relating to financial sustainability. Our council is doing everything we can to reduce outlays to try and improve income, but income is severely reduced for a number of reasons, most of which are state government based. And we bear the brunt of having to reduce services or reduce things that we can achieve for our ratepayers. We look forward to continuing to try and find ways to improve our sustainability, but our ratepayers should know it is not something that we see as a short-term problem whilst we have restrictions placed upon us from outside. Councillors, those in favour? Carried. Flood recovery update. Ms Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide an update on recovery activities arising from the October and November 2022 flood events and to seek Council's approval for the flood recovery plan, which outlines ongoing recovery actions. In the flood events of October and November last year, the communities of Avoca, Lexington, Nutty, Alec, Beaufort and Amphitheatre were the most significantly impacted, with many homes, farming properties, roads, bridges and community facilities damaged. Council has set up a dedicated flood recovery team consisting of 4 positions that will be in place for the next 12 months or so and funded by relevant funding agencies. A flood recovery newsletter will be issued each month to keep the community informed with up-to-date information and support. And Council is also in the process of establishing a recovery coordination committee to oversee the recovery activities detailed in the flood recovery plan. This committee will be formed with partner organisations from a range of government agencies, community groups and non-government organisations to ensure a multi-agency integrated approaches to recovery is undertaken. But more importantly, community members from flood affected areas will also be invited to be a member on the committee to ensure that the community's views and needs are actively integrated across all activities. And expressions of interest for community members to join the committee will be advertised in the coming weeks. The draft flood recovery plan has been developed to coordinate the flood recovery operation, and it's been designed to evolve over time and have the community at its core. The draft plan has been attached for approval at this meeting. A brief snapshot of known impacts at the time this report was written was been provided in more detail in the body of the report on impacts across the Shire, which actually was very widespread and a lot of impact. Council staff have been working with community representatives, government departments and insurers to help reinstate the assets and or consider mitigation options to reduce future flooding. Those not insured will require external funding to undertake repair works. Unfortunately, repair work is going to be quite a long process, and it's acknowledged that there is disruption to those community groups affected. Some funding is available to support necessary activities, and there have been a range of other Commonwealth and state funding programmes announced and in place to support the residents, businesses, farmers and sporting clubs themselves. Many of those individual funds require individual registration, and part of Council's effort will continue to be to support our residents and businesses in accessing that funding. So, but in conclusion, this report provides a summary of the widespread impact of the flood event of last year and outlines the recovery arrangements in place and plan for the coming months. But Council would like to thank all the community members, businesses and organisations who have helped with the recovery efforts so far, and often at short notice. Flood recovery is a big job, takes time, and the efforts have been really appreciated. The officer's recommendation is that Council acknowledges the significant and widespread impact of flooding across the Shire due to the October and November events, continues to support the recovery actions outlined in this report, seeks to continue to resource the recovery effort in order to achieve the best outcomes for our community, continues to advocate to state and Commonwealth governments where required to ensure Council and our communities are not disadvantaged by the natural disaster, approves the flood recovery plan, and that a status update on the flood recovery plan be brought to a Council meeting in 3 months' time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bramwell. Councillor, we have a recommendation. Moved Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Keogh. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Ms Bramwell, for that report. I think it is comprehensive and it's a significant issue for us, as it has been in 2016 and was in 2010-11. I just have a question, please. Just where are we at with getting some of our claims through the system and being able to get out and do some roadworks, as we heard at Warburg the other day? Certainly some of the locals are saying, when will we be able to get out and fix some of those roads? So if you're able to give us some direction on that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I'll start and then I'll pass over to Mr Gowans, if that's okay. We do have some emergency approvals to work on emergency works, and I'll ask Mr Gowans to give you more detail on that. But with regard, I can give you an update with regards to insured properties. So our insurers have been out and done assessments on all of the facilities, particularly community facilities that were covered by insurance. And some of the works have been approved there and have started already being rectified. There are a couple of properties that may not be able to be repaired properly, and we're waiting to see if we can get a payout for those. I'll pass over to Mr Gowans now. Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Ms Bramwell, and thank you, Councillor Clive, for your question. Council have had to undertake quite a range of assessments of the impacted parts of the network, and at my last look, we'd had over 650 impacted sites on our road network, and they range from small parts of damage to quite extensive bits of damage. We were able to undertake some emergency work immediately to provide access, but not full repair. To undertake immediate emergency repair work, we actually had to get special approval through the National Disaster Recovery Fund administration team, which is actually run through the Department of Transport. And we'd actually listed some high impacted sites across the Shire, and we only earlier this week received approval for that. So that's really good that we're starting to be able to get those approvals through, which means that contractors will be able to be engaged and repair those works. And just a couple of examples for anyone who's interested. There's some damage on the Landsborough Store Road, where the seal has effectively come away, and that's been approved. There's some major damage on the Natty Alec Road near the cemetery corner. I think it's Mills Lane is the road that intersects there. That's been approved. There's some quite heavy edge rutting on the Beaufort Warburg Road that's been approved as well. So, I mean, and there's other locations, but just to give a bit of a sense to the community that those high impacted, high use roads, we're starting to get some approvals through, and we'll see a lot more contractor activity.
Thank you. Any other councillor? Councillor Vance?
When the floods come, the damage comes very quickly. The repairs don't come quite so quickly. But the general public need to understand that council require funding from outside sources to bring these repairs into reality. We can't pay it out of our back pocket because the back pocket's pretty slim. So it's disappointing, but it's understandable when people drive over a road and they keep driving over the same potholes all the time and they're thinking to themselves, when are they going to repair it? Well, council's always on the ball, but we are reliant upon Big Brother to come up with the funding. So as long as people understand that, it's not necessarily always just the fact that council's slack. There's more to it than that.
Thank you, Councillor Vance. Councillors, we have a recommendation in front of us. All those in favour? Carried. Delegations, Ms Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is for council to adopt revised delegations from council. It is a requirement under the Local Government Act 2020 and a range of other legislation to accurately record any delegation of powers, duties or functions to the Chief Executive Officer and members of council staff to allow a proper and lawful administration of council's functions and operations, without which all functions and operations would require daily resolution of council. The following instruments of delegation were reviewed in February 2023 using information provided by council's in-house compliance system. That is the instrument of appointment and authorisation for authorised officers, an instrument of delegation from council to the Chief Executive Officer, and an instrument of delegation from council to members of council staff. And the review included changes required through introduction of new legislation or amendment of existing legislation, and changes in officers responsible for authorised powers, duties or functions. Documents have been provided to the council for adoption, and following adoption, the documents will be sealed with the council seal. Amended instruments, once approved by the council, will remain in force until further reviews are conducted in the future. And it's the officer's recommendation that council, in the exercise of the powers conferred by Section 11 of the Local Government Act and other legislation referenced in the attached instruments, resolves that the members of council staff referenced in the instruments S5, S6 and S11 as attached be appointed and authorised as set out, and that the instruments come into force immediately the common seal of the council is affixed to the instruments and remain in force until council determines to vary or revoke them, and that council affixes the common seal to the instruments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bramwell. Moved Councillor Ferrari, seconded Councillor Keogh. Any discussion, councillors? No. All those in favour? Carried. Rural addressing and road naming, Ms Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report brings to council's attention some legacy issues around street numbering and rural addressing, and the actions being implemented to rectify those issues over time. In August 2021, with many properties in the Pyrenees Shire lacking street numbers or rural addresses, council officers identified a need to ensure that any properties in the Shire where activities and occupation were occurring had a proper address compliant with the Australian standard. And to prevent future issues arising, a line in the sand was drawn, and council implemented an additional step in existing internal procedures, such as planning, building and environmental health permit applications, and the creation of new properties when land is subdivided, to include a referral to the appropriate officers so that correct addresses can be generated. So this means that the problem won't continue moving forward. To create addresses that comply with the above standard road names must also be considered in line with the naming rules of places. So as part of the above addressing processes, anomalies in road names across the Shire are also being identified. At the very least, these anomalies cause confusion and inconvenience, but there can be a significant risk to public safety, as emergency services cannot access the proper addresses, or they go at the wrong end of the street. Similar. Pyrenees Shire is one of many rural municipalities that have historically not had the resources to attend to this kind of difficulty. And the current project is designed to address the issues constructively, but over time. The benefits to our residents are many, as once the address is created and registered, this is where the O call centre gets its information and validates the addresses from. Since the project started in 2021, we've had a consistent increase in the number of existing addresses, with over 200 new and existing properties being addressed, as well as pre-addressing almost 70 lots spread over 23 subdivisions. So we are addressing the problem. The type of issues arising include duplicated road names and therefore duplicated addresses. What they call non-contiguous roads, which is roads and streets where with the same name, but they've got a barrier in the middle, example, a creek or a physical object or barrier that prevents driving through the road from one end to the other. Unnamed roads, which can result in an inability to create a proper address and easily locate a property. And then a mismatch between council data. There's also an issue with origin destination road names, for instance, where to goes from town to town. So where sometimes the official names get reversed, or somebody in common use, they drop one of the names off. That type of road name is no longer allowed for new road names. So to work towards improving these issues, a list of road names has been compiled and some priorities identified where issues are more likely to cause problems. And this list is a dynamic document likely to be regularly updated as more issues are identified or brought to council's attention. So the existing issues, there's a long list that's included in the body of the report with under those headings that I already identified. None of them are that easy to rectify however, over time we will deal with those that present the most risk to public safety. As part of this report, it's proposed that correction of the first more complex issue on the list be progressed, and that is that two roads named Landsborough Road are both present within 1.5 kilometres apart and create a risk that emergency services may look for an address on the wrong Landsborough Road, especially as one is long in distance. Both roads, where they are within the Pyrenees Shire, are council-maintained roads. The first Landsborough Road, we call it number 1, runs east-west from the edge of Stawell in northern Grampians Shire to Landsborough. The second one, number 2, runs north-south from the intersection with the Stawell of Ochre Road to the intersection of Ararat St Arnaud Road in Landsborough. And a map has been provided to make it easier to understand which ones. In this instance, it's suggested that the second Landsborough Road be renamed because it's easier to rename a road that falls entirely within the Pyrenees Shire, and the aim is to impact as few residents or business addresses as possible. In this case, number 2 has far less properties impacted. It's in the steps to be taken to change the name of the road have been provided to you in the body of the report. And it is officer's recommendation that council now notes the achievements of the project to rectify minor road name anomalies and addressing issues as detailed in the body of the report. Approves the start of addressing more complex road naming and addressing issues as part of the project, and approves the sub-project to remove the duplication of two roads named Landsborough Road within 1.5 kilometres of each other, taking the steps as detailed in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bramwell. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Moved Councillor Vance, seconded Councillor Ferrari. Councillor Vance.
Yeah, quite happy with the recommendation, Mr Chairman. From one who's lived in Landsborough for well over 70 years, I always call it the Avoca Road and the Store Road. I've never considered it both being called Landsborough Road, but it depends where you're coming from, I guess.
Thank you, Councillor Vance. Councillor Ferrari.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's just important to note that might seem menial that we do these jobs, but in the case of emergency, time is critical, and the accuracy of being able to attend and address is vital. So, as you said, it might seem menial, but it's very, very important. And as we've seen over the last sort of couple of years, we've had quite a number of emergencies. So, if you want them to turn up on time in the right place, it's important we get these things right. So, an important piece of work.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrari. No else? All those in favour? Carried. Lexington Community Hub Community Asset Committee. Ms Bramwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to appoint the committee members of the Lexington Community Hub Community Asset Committee to manage and maintain the newly constructed Lexington Community Hub at 1 Prince Street, Lexington, and to consider the allocation of a seeding grant to assist in the operational establishment of committee functions. The Local Government Act 2020 allows council to establish community asset committees and appoint members to those committees as necessary to manage a community asset. Council has recently completed the construction of the Lexington Community Hub, and it's proposed that activities and management of this facility will be undertaken on behalf of council by members of a community asset committee comprising of equal representation from the Lexington Football Netball Club, the Lexington Cricket Club, the Lexington Golf Club, and community representatives. Late last year, council ran an expression of interest process for prospective committee members, and in total 12 applications were received. An assessment of the applications received was conducted to reduce duplication of representation across the community groups, and it is recommended that all 12 applications be accepted. An instrument of delegation is under preparation for authorisation by the Chief Executive Officer, together with a governance manual similar to that provided to other committees. And it's the officer's recommendation that council establishes a new community asset committee to manage the newly constructed premises at 1 Prince Street, Lexington, to be known as the Lexington Community Hub Community Asset Committee, and formally appoints the following community representatives to that committee: Greg Fisher, Brad Sandland, Bryce Carslake, Ed Bradley, Fiona Fisher, Hugh Brody, Katrina Lee, Kerry Lee, Paul Carslake, Rob Hopcroft, Susan Driscoll, and Adrian Smith. Unfortunately, Adrian Smith was missed off the recommendation originally, but I've added it in to the recommendation, if that's okay. And that council requires, in accordance with the Local Government Act, council officers to appropriately guide and monitor activities of the committee established under the Act and report annually on committee activities to council, and to allocate a seeding grant to assist in the operational establishment of committee functions. And it's recommended that 8,000 should be provided to them as a seeding grant. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Bramwell. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Moved Councillor Clark, seconded Councillor Ferrari.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to insert the figure of $8,000 in the report if I can get the support of my fellow councillors.
Yep.
Yep, good. And just to add to that, I think it's been a little bit of time coming, but the community are super, super happy and super excited about their facility. So I think this will give them a really good kickstart to get underway. And I assume we'll be having something there fairly soon as council too, as part of our role in supporting them in that community. But yeah, very happy. Great facility.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Ferrari.
It's fantastic to see that the community now has use of that facility, and it is such a fantastic facility, albeit a little time coming. I do note some of the names on that committee. I probably know most of them, and it gives me some confidence that they'll work hard to make the most of that facility and make sure that it's run properly and cared for appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. No other? I think it's wonderful to have the community now involved and take control of the building for their own purposes. All those in favour? Carried. Councillors' reports and general business. Councillor Vance.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Following on from January, we had the Australia Day celebrations, which were magnificently, I thought. Credit to the organisers. A lot of hard work from Chantel. I know she puts a lot into this, and it's very much appreciated by the council. So well done.
Thank you.
Pleasing to see we had recipients in all categories too, which was great. This is always come that you can fill all positions. Sometimes we have to struggle, but this time it was well done. I had a site inspection that I attended in Redbank and passed on some details to our engineer. I had a Timber Towns meeting on the 16th this month. The main thing to come out of the Timber Towns meeting was the disappointment of the Gippsland people with the closing of the Hayfield mill. There's been 200 jobs gone at the Hayfield mill now. There will be no more white paper produced in Australia anymore. All white paper will be imported from offshore, which is crazy, I believe, but our state government's made a decision to close our forests, and they're looking at future use of blue gums, but you have to plant the blue gums before you can use them, and they take 30 years to grow. So if you close your forests, you find yourself without products, so you can't produce the paper. I believe the Hayfield mill will still produce cardboard, which is made from pulp and I'm no expert in the making of cardboard, but certainly obviously very different to white paper. The mill was closed by the owners' people, and they got a fairly large payout from the state government to transfer jobs. I believe the mill is possibly going to be sold very soon, and they will walk away with a fairly tidy little profit. Anyway, that's the problems that face Gippsland. There's a lot of understandably angry forest workers and transport people that supply this mill are now finding themselves out in the cold and nowhere to go. So my heart goes out to those people. It's not a good result of anything. At the other end of the state, in the Green Triangle, all of a sudden China has come back on board and they're taking blue gum timber in big parcels. So I've been told by a representative from the Glenelg Shire, and also they're exporting now to India and Thailand as well. So the Portland Harbour is really buzzing. It's chips and logs going out at a fairly savage rate. So I guess if you're prepared to move from Gippsland to Portland, you might be able to drive your transports down there and find some employment, but it's not a very good scenario. With the port firing up, there's also a great deal of excitement about opening the marina through the Portland rail line. Getting that upgraded with the Maryborough through to Ararat, nearly complete, I think. I see crossings almost completed. There's still a few cars sitting on the side of the railway line when you go to Ararat with a lollipop man there that's got to stop the traffic if there's a train coming, but it's getting close to completion. So the next step is to get marina through to Portland, and then we'll see some grain transported. There's a fair way, of course, from marina to Portland. Also, we're upgrading the line to carry 22 tonne.
Yeah.
That's my lot. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Means. Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just reflect on last week's briefing at Waubra, I think, which was really well attended and a range of issues in that sense. And I think note our concerns about, particularly about the Western Victorian Transmission Network, Western Victorian Renewals Project that was brought up there, and we're just kind of waiting on some more information around the BNI West, which affects that. I know we should get that this week, and I know our role as council will be to continue to inform the community about that once we find that information out. Like Councillor Vance, I think we had a very successful day on Australia Day. It was really, really well run by the Beaufort community, as it always is. In terms of my external interests, on behalf of Council, CVGA and the Highlands Land, they both started back with meetings in the last couple of weeks. I represented council at those and had a number of small road matters in my patch to go and pursue in that sense of things. With my MOV hat on, it seems that Christmas brings around good cheer in all the politicians, and I've already met with 3 and I've got another couple to go next week, so that's really nice. I've met with Senator Bridget McKenzie, who is the opposition spokesman for infrastructure, Housing Minister Colin Brooks, and meeting with the opposition treasurer Brad Rosewell tomorrow, and our local government minister, Minister Horn, next week, which is really good in that sense. I'd just like to finish by a bit of a reflection on what Councillor Vance said. We've got a bucket load of wood chips in Portland, and we've got a mill that could use them in Gippsland. And you'd reckon there'd be people that'd be smart enough in this state to get the 2 of those things together and make it work.
Thank you, councillor Clark. Councillor Keogh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, Australia Day, shout out to Chantel and all the others that made it a fantastic day, and a lovely day for young and old, and the weather was lovely, and I think just a beautiful day. A few days after that, I had the Carnham Rec Reserve meeting, so again, a huge shout out. The Nunn family have been a big part of that reserve committee for a number of years, and they're just incredible. So just a shout out to that family as a whole, but there were a couple that have been there for decades now who have just retired. So they didn't want a big shout out, but I do just want to, I'll put them as a Nunn family, but they've done a wonderful job over the time. And just looking at what that rec committee has been doing and looking at projects, we've supported them as council with a number of projects recently, but also using a lot of in-kind labour to build on those. It's an incredible community, and a number of the cricket club, the football club, all those people and general rec reserve people that work together to look after that community resource. I also attended the Pyrenees Hideout. What a fantastic day. I think I'm still hoarse from that a week and a half later, from singing to the amazing artists that we were able to get here. And the artists also recognise what a beautiful community we have, and what a gem it was for them to be able to come here. So I think that says a lot when you have national stars and even international stars that say that about where we are. So very well run, and very, again, for young and old, there are activities. My 2-year-old enjoyed it just as much as I did, and Bernard did with friends of ours. So a fantastic day to all, and looking forward to hopefully many more family fun friendly events similar to that. I would like to shout out to the park run that's been happening, to another really great family event. I haven't been able to attend one yet, but speaking to friends who have, they're fantastic events. If you can get to them, please do get to them, because they're a great way to get out with the family and get some great exercise. We did have another fantastic event, the Snake Valley Swap Meet, a couple of weekends ago. That attracted many people from around, locally and beyond. But again, put together by locals and others. And it's just as a great event to have so many people coming to our little town of Snake Valley. Last weekend, the Snake Valley also ran the Horse Trail Ride Committee ran one just this Sunday past, and again attracted a beautiful amount of people. And it was really well run in that everyone was very respectful of when it was happening. The organisers let everyone know, so when the times would be least convenient on the roads, and it just made for a wonderful event. And the weather held out beautifully for everyone, and it was a really good horse event. So that's become an annual event, which again, council has been terrific at supporting that and supporting that to happen in a safe manner. Coming up, I have Mency tomorrow. So that will be interesting. Kathy and I will be there, and Doug at that. I also have a really exciting event that I'll be attending on the 8th of March. And just a shout out to women across our Shire and beyond. Skipton are holding an International Women's Day event. So we have our local Wadawurrung woman, Bonnie Chu, will be part of that, presenting at that. But it's more a get-together of women and a celebration of women and particularly local women. So that's on Wednesday, the 8th of March, and tickets can be bought online. They're only $10 for a ticket, but really it will be a fantastically packed night. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Ferrari.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, I'll echo what the previous councillors have spoken about Australia Day. It was fantastic to have it here in Beaufort this year, and it was a fantastic event. It was well attended. It was a really pleasant day, so that always helps with anything. And it was really pleasing to see some people choosing to become Australian citizens. So that always makes those days extra special when we've got those people that are choosing to become part of our country and our traditions by becoming Australian citizens. And congratulations to all those involved in the organising, in particular Chantel, because she does so much work behind the scenes, and we basically turn up and enjoy the day, but then all the work's done. So there's a great deal of work that goes into that, coordinating that event and making it all happen. So fantastic, well done, Chantel. Had a meeting with the local member, Martha Haylett, and the CEO and I, and where we discussed a number of local issues. And it's pleasing to note that Martha's fairly aware of a lot of our local issues, and she's in some ways quite sympathetic to them. So, hopefully that might translate into something good for us. A number of constituent meetings and some discussions. Strangely enough, a lot around roads, which is not uncommon because that's a big part of our work and in each and every ward. And I did attend the Pyrenees Hideout. It was just such a fantastic day. I thought it was really, really well attended, well run. The lineup was fantastic. Like, to see that in a small town of Beaufort, that lineup was just fantastic. And when I got up on the stage with the mayor, I just wanted to jump on the drum kit and give it one go, but he wouldn't let me. So anyway, I thought if they'd heard me play, they probably would have dragged me off the thing. But it was a fantastic day. I just thought it was so well run. The music was great. Even I had a bit of a sing along. So I hope we can continue those type of events. I think they're really good for the community. I think they're really good socially. And again, we just turn up and go to the day we pay our money and all the work's done. So congratulations to those people who managed and coordinated and run that event. It was really well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrari. Jenny and I also attended the Hideout Festival, and I agree, it was a wonderful day. Keeping you off the drums was only a minor part of it. But yes, the organising of it, the structure and everything, it opened my eyes to what can happen in a sports ground, and was really, really pleasant to see the community support it. And I've not heard a single derogatory comment about the day, and I've spoken to many, many people about it. So well done to the organisers. Australia Day. I think every councillor has thanked Chantel, and none of you were standing behind the microphone actually speaking from the lectern, and I was, and the help that I got from Chantel was absolutely brilliant. It is the sort of thing that we sometimes take for granted, and that should never happen. Thank you, Chantel. And other than that, that'll do, I think. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll, pursuant to the provisions of section 4.1.1C of the Council's governance rules and section 66 of the Local Government Act 2020, the meeting being closed to the public in order to consider confidential items. We have a recommendation, councillors, to close the meeting. Moved Councillor Ferrari, seconded Councillor Keogh. All those in favour? I'd like to thank the audience this evening and anyone listening and watching. We will now move into closed council, and the live stream will be ceased until we come back. Thank you very much.